In this tutorial, I'm going to teach you how to digitize a design step by step. Let's get started. Inner Circle members, download your lesson files below, and if you're on YouTube, check out ELS in the description. Step 1 is to open up our software, and here I have version 2060, but if you're on a newer one, that is no problem at all. The second step to creating our own designs is to import our design. Now with the ELS, you have the ability to bring both PNGs, JPEGs, but you can also bring in vectors. For today's design, we are going to bring in a JPEG. So I'm going to click here on my image and I'm going to load my backdrop. Now I have my mango design, and here we have a super cute little mango design. The third step is going to be to resize it to our preferences. So I'm going to click on the window button again, the backdrop, and I'm going to select my backdrop. Now with my backdrop selected, I can right click on my mouse to access my properties, or I can also go on the top right on the toolbar to access my properties. Right now, the width and the height is just a little too big, so I'm going to bring this down to about 4 inches in height and 4 inches in width. So something like that is pretty good. Now we have the grid enabled, but we can also choose to disable it, and that's what I'm going to do. And here we have our widget tool with the tools that we're going to use to create this design. The next step is to use different tools to create this design. My favorite way of digitizing is to start out by doing all the outlines. So if you see this design, all of the outlines would be the black color outlines, as well as the eyes and the mouth. And the reason I like doing that is because it helps me define where the rest of the colors are gonna go. So let's take care of creating all of these outlines. And to create them, I'm going to use the steel tool to create a simple satin stitch. So let's select the steel tool. We're going to select 2.5 millimeters, maybe 3 millimeters. It depends on the width in which you want your stitch to be created. But for me, I think for now, I want it to be 2.5 millimeters. The next step is to define our recipes. So we're gonna go up here at the top left to change our recipe, and depending on the fabric that you're going to embroider this on, you will want to choose that recipe. So for example, if I'm just going to embroider this on maybe nothing, just a test, I will choose no recipe. But if I'm going to use a cotton shirt, then I will switch to cotton. If I'm going to do it on a hat or a cap, I might want to do that. You want to choose the recipe that you're going to embroider this on. So for now, let's just put a canvas for now, because that's what I'm going to apply it, and you can apply your recipe. By pressing and holding spacebar, you can pan around. So I'm holding spacebar and I can pan around my screen. I can use my mouse wheel to scroll in and out, to zoom in and out. And I can also click here on this little desktop to fit to screen, zoom 1 to 1, 1 to 3, and 1 to 6, depending on the zoom amount that I want. But I think for now, 1 to 1 is okay. So I'm going to just make sure that I have selected my width, currently at 2.5 millimeters, my density at 0.4, and my input, we're just gonna have it set to fast draw. Now I am going to change the color of my outline so it's easier for you guys to see. And to change the color of your thread, you just have to click down here and select a different color that you'd like to work with. I'm going to left click on this edge right here, and then I'm going to right click to make a point, and you can see that now we have a bit of a curve and it follows me around. So while holding spacebar, you can see a hand pops up. I'm going to use this hand to click and drag to go to the next point, and I'm going to right click, then right click again. And now because I ran out of space, I'm just going to use my mouse to click and drag while holding spacebar to go down here, then right click, click and drag, right click. If you find it easier to be a little bit more zoomed out, you can. I just like to be zoomed in at 500, 600% to make it easier for me to digitize the details. So now that I've clicked here, this is my last point. And if you've made a mistake, no problem, because all you have to do on your keyboard is press backspace. That will delete one input key, and then there you go, 1 point is now gone. I can delete the second one and I can create it once again like that. Now this one is looking kind of curved and I don't really like that. So for the last one, I'm going to delete it and I'm going to press left click to create a straight point. Perfect. So I'm going to press enter on my keyboard. And now if we go back and we do zoom 1 to 1, Here you can enable the 3D or view the 3D, and you can see we created our first outline, and it was super simple. Now that we finished creating the bigger outline, we want to take care of these outlines up here. But if you were to think about the shape in 3D, this stem right here would be behind the leaves. So we want to digitize this little shape right here, which means that I have to find a way to connect it. Now on our widget tool, the next step is going to be to switch to the run tool, because we're going to make a manual connection to digitize that shape first. And the reason why I'm digitizing this shape first is because if I were to create the leaves first, the overlapping of the two stitches wouldn't look very clean. I'm going to create a connection utilizing the run tool, and that's all I did is click the run tool, currently at length 2.5, utilizing fast draw. And I'm going to left click to put my first point, then right click, and I'm just gonna go through the middle of this leaf like so, and I can finish somewhere around here. That's perfect. So I'm going to press enter, and you see we just created a nice little connection right in the middle of the leaf, and you won't be able to see this connection once we put a satin outline on top. Next step, we're going to switch back to our steel tool, and we're going to create another outline, but we're going to do the stem down. So I'm going to left click, then right click to create a little bit of a curve like so. I'm just pressing a couple points, and then I'm going to left click and press enter on my keyboard. And you can see we made that really fast. Now that we finished making the shape, we can take care of the rest of the outline by creating this last steel. So I'm going to press start somewhere around here, and I'm going to do a left click, then right click to create those curves, right click, left click, and right click. So you can see I did right, left, right to kind of create a curved edge. And then we're gonna do right click all the way here to create a couple of curves like so. Awesome. Once again, I'm just holding spacebar to pan around so that I can get enough space on my screen to digitize the next shape. And I'm going to do left click to put my first point, then right click, right click, right click to make all of these curved inputs, then right click, right click, right click, and then we can finish the rest of the design by clicking right click like so. And I'm gonna do one more point right here at the end, that is left click and press enter. Now you can see that these stitches right here aren't necessarily closing, so we're gonna take care of that next. We are going to select by grabbing the select tool or pressing A on our keyboard, and we're going to select the stitch that we just created. Now, if you go on your toolbar, you can see there is an option that says close shape, and that is besides the draw. So I'm going to press close shape, and now it took care of that stitch, and now it's fully closed. Let's also click 1 to 1 so we can see what that looks like, and we have the whole outline. So all I'm going to do is grab everything that we've just created and turn it to black. Perfect. And we have the outline created for this beautiful little design. Next, let's take care of the eyes and mouth. So for that, we're going to use the artwork tool. I'm going to click again on my brushes, and I want to access the artwork tool. And instead of utilizing my fast draw input, I'm going to click on shape, and I'm going to bring a circle. So we're going to click circle. Let's zoom in on this eye, and I'm going to click and drag to create a simple circle like that. So we're going to press select or A on your keyboard, and I'm going to select that circle. I'm just going to make it red so it's easier to see. And down here, we have multiple options to turn this stitch into a stitch type. So for me, what do I want it to be? I think I want to turn the circle into a satin. So I'm going to click convert to satin, and I'm going to click and drag to set my inclination points. So I want it to be horizontal, and I'm going to press enter. Now I'm going to press enter on my keyboard to select my start and my stop. And now we have an eye like so. If we want to change the angles of the stitches going from horizontal to a 45-degree angle or vertically, we totally can. All we have to do is make sure that we select the shape, and under the shape edit, we can change our inclinations. So I'm going to click inclinations, and I can move these inclinations to be vertical like this or horizontal, depending on how you want the shape to look. So I think I'm gonna leave it like that. That looks pretty cool. And now we're going to copy and paste this file. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to click copy, and I'm going to right click and I'm going to click paste. I'm going to click and drag and move it to the other side like so. Now we have two eyes. Now before we finish, we have the mouth to do, so let's take care of that by going back to our steel tool. And we're going to switch, instead of utilizing the circle, we're gonna go back to our fast draw. So that's the input. Go to fast draw, make sure that on our density we leave it at 0.4 and our width we have it at 2.5. Perfect. I'm going to press left click to put my first input, then right click to start creating these curved shapes as best as I can, and press left click on my last input. Now we press enter and we have a cute little smile. Nice. Now we are going to select the shape by pressing A on our keyboard, or again, you can press select up here, and we're gonna access our properties. In our properties, we can scroll down using our scroll wheel, and we wanna go to our start line cap and our stop line cap. And all we're going to do is switch this from standard to rounded and standard to rounded, so we can make these two little lines just look a little bit more tapered as opposed to looking a little too sharp and just ending like so. It looks very nice, and the smile is a bit more softer. Before we move on to the other colors, let's change these to black. So at the top right, you have your sequence. I'm going to select under my sequence view the current colors which we made, and that's red. You can see we have the left eye, the right eye, and the mouth. We can change the sequence if we really wanted to. So if I wanted to digitize the mouth in the middle, we can. And I'm going to select all three, or click up here to select all, and I'm going to change it to color black. There we go. That looks adorable. So now we finished the whole outline of the design, and if you'd like, you could totally embroider it just like this. If I click on my backdrop and I disable view backdrop, you can see that is such a cute fruit, and a lot of people like this style. But we are not done yet. We are going to add some colors, some highlights and shadows to our design. And this now becomes super simple thanks to us creating the outlines first. The next step is to create the highlights and the shadows, and we have two. We have the shadows from the mango, and we have the highlights from the light green. So let's take care of the shadows first. And for that, we're going to use a really awesome tool called the Classic Satin. If you see down here on your widget tool under the brushes, so click on brushes, we were currently on steel. We are now going to switch to Classic Satin. And you see that the fast draw is now gone and we only have line. That is for a very specific reason, which I will show you soon. And the density, we're probably gonna switch it to 1 millimeter. And it's because it's just going to be a simple shadow. Let's select our color. What shall we make it? Maybe a little bit of a dark red or a dark orange. I think I like this orange right here. That looks pretty good. Now again, zoom in utilizing your scroll wheel and pan around by holding spacebar. The steps in which we're going to take when utilizing this tool is going to be a point, counterpoint. So let's put our first point down starting here. I'm going to press left click to create my first point, and I'm going to zoom in a lot so you guys can see a lot easier, and I'm going to put my counterpoint. So that one, I think I'm going to put it somewhere around here, and I'm going to press left click to create that second one. Then just like how we did the steel, we're also going to do left click to create straight points and right click to create curved points. Now here I want it to be a curved point, so I'm going to do right click, and now I have to do a counterpoint on the other side, so I'm going to do right click. Next, I'm going to pan around and do right click and left click and left click. And you can see all I'm trying to do is create this shadow, but I'm also trying to go from each, like the furthest end with my point and my counterpoint. So for example, this shape right here, this is the furthest end, so I'm going to click right there. I'm going to left click, so I'm just gonna back right now. I'm going to delete a couple points, and here I'm going to left click, and I think this is the furthest point, so I'm going to click left click, that's on the other side. So I'm going from one side to the other. I'm going to right click from one side to the other, one side to the other, and then one side to this very other end, and so on and so forth. So I'm going right side to the other end. So I'm just going to right side, point, counterpoint, point, counterpoint, and point, counterpoint, and I'm just left clicking and right clicking to create either a straight point or a curved point. So point, counterpoint, point, counterpoint, and going all the way around, point, counterpoint, just creating this. Now, as I'm creating these point counterpoints, the reason why I'm going from one end to another is because while we're creating each one of these point counterpoints, this right here, from this point to the other, we're creating an inclination, and an inclination is an angle. So if you saw how we changed the angle of this eye and this eye right here, we're setting the inclinations the same way, or the angles of each stitch, to look like the smile, to look like the mouth, and define where we want our stitches to go. Let's keep going. So point, counterpoint, and I'm just right clicking to create these curves. Right click, right click, right click, and right click. And I think I'm going to finish right there. So all I have to do is press enter, and let's see what that looks like. Ooh, you can see we created an awesome shadow. Now, of course, this isn't finished just yet. We have to make some modifications to this shape. So let's take care of that. We are going to open up our properties once again, and this is where we can make all our modifications to the stitch shape that we just created. Now you can see our density is set to 1 millimeter, which means that it is going to be a little bit more spaced out than the outlines. The stitch length is fine. The one thing we are going to change for this shape is the underlay. So I'm going to click to open up my underlay, and I'm going to take out the contour and the zigzag because I don't really want this shape. The shadow doesn't really need any underlays. So I just took them out like so. Next, I'm going to take care of these highlights. So let's change the color down here. I can check out more colors to the right, and I think I'm going to press this Brother 27 fresh green. So let's start creating these shapes. I'm just going to zoom in into this left one, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing. Point, counterpoint by left and left clicking, and then point, counterpoint, left click, left click, left click, just do point, counterpoint. And you can see the reason why I'm rotating my point and my counterpoint is to change the stitch angles. Now I'm going to press enter, and you can see that I made those really awesome angles, and I'm just going to create the next one, point, counterpoint, point, counterpoint, and point, counterpoint. Perfect. Now let's go to this one over here by holding spacebar so I can drag around, and I'm just going to move my widget tool out of the way. Point, counterpoint, point, counterpoint, and so on and so forth. Point, counterpoint, point, counterpoint, and point and counterpoint. Perfect. Press enter, and then point, counterpoint, point, counterpoint, and the last one like so. Now I can zoom out, and now we can see the highlights created on the shape. But these shapes also have underlay, so we have to ensure we take them out. So how do we do that? First, let's go to our sequence view, and we can select the shapes that we just created, which are the highlights or the fresh screen. And the next step is to open up our properties. Now in the properties, you can see the underlays are already opened up, but if you don't, just scroll down until you see underlays and make sure you open up that tab. Now make sure you disable the contour and the zigzag, and you can close these windows, and there you go. There should be no more underlays on these highlights. So now we've taken care of the highlights and the shadows, and that was very simple. And the last step to coloring this design is to add the bases. This is where it gets really fun. So let's get started with the small little shape right here. I'm just going to zoom in like so, and because I want this little shape right here to be a little bit more filled in as opposed to the highlights and shadows, I'm going to go back to my density, and instead of 1 millimeter, I'm going to switch it to 0.4 millimeters. So let's select this dark brown right here at the bottom, and we're just gonna do exactly the same thing. Point, counterpoint, point, counterpoint. Now you can see I'm doing something slightly different, and that is that I'm going in the middle of that black outline or the black steel. And that's because I want to overlap my designs ever so slightly to avoid any spacing on this design. Sometimes you may see your embroidery designs have a little bit of a gap, so just by adding a little bit more of that overlap, you are reducing the chances of having that spacing. So I just like to put mine around the middle of the black outlines, and I'm doing point, counterpoint, point, counterpoint, and I'm going to press enter. If it's a little bit hard to see, I will disable the 3D, and you can see now that color is filled in. So let's zoom out, and we can see that now we've taken care of that. Next, let's create the fills for the leaves. And for this step, we're going to use a different tool that is going to be the fill stitch. As you can see, the fill brush is down here at the bottom, besides the satin and the applique. So I'm going to click on fill. Let's check out our density. I think 0.4 is perfect, and we're going to leave it in fast draw as well. Now I'm just going to zoom in using the scroll wheel, and let me pick a different color. Since we used the light green for the highlights, I think I'll use 42, which is more of a standard green. Now, because we are utilizing fast draw, we are going to start out by left clicking to put our first point, then right click to create a curve, right click to create a curve. So I'm right clicking, then left click to create a straight point like so, and then right click. And remember that I'm just making sure to overlap ever so slightly because I don't want this sleeve to have any gaps between the outline and the fill itself. So now that we're here to the end, I'm going to press enter on my keyboard, and we have a prompt. If you don't see the outline at the moment, it's because it's hidden underneath the 3D stitch. So just disable the 3D, and now we can see the shape that we created underneath the black outline. Now you can see that the closer I get to it, I get a prompt that allows me to put my inclination points. And all I have to do is when I get that little prompt utilizing my mouse, you can see the prompt appears right there. I'm going to click and drag from top to the bottom and then press enter, and then press enter one more time. If I were to enable 3D again, you can see we have that shape created. So let's do the same thing to the other one. Let's disable our 3D, and while selecting the fill tool and the fast draw, I'm going to do left click, right click, right click, right click, and right click to create those points. Then I'm going to continue pressing left click, left click, left click to go around this edge, and then right click until I finish this shape right here, and then I can press enter. Now you can see we created that shape right there. It's just a little bit harder to see because we have the outline underneath, but the closer I get to it, I can see the little inclination prompt. So I'm going to click and drag so that I can create that inclination, press enter, and now we have those two shapes. Awesome. Now don't worry if you don't see the highlights anymore, because under the sequence view, we're going to fix those before we finished our design. We have one more fill to do, and that is the base of the mango. So let's take care of that next. I'm going to select this yellow right here, the Brother 205 yellow. I'm going to zoom in, and again, I'm going to left click to create my first point, right click to create a curved point, right click, left click to create points, straight points, and then right click, and I'm just overlapping ever so slightly underneath that outline in which we just created. You can zoom out as you're creating points so you can change the perspective on the shape which you're creating. So I'm right clicking to create all of these points, making sure that they're curved, holding spacebar to pan around, and going all the way around the shape. Now, once I've gone the whole way around, I'm going to press enter, and you can see it disappeared right away. That's because we have 3D enabled. So let's just take it out, and same thing, we're going to create the inclination by making sure that it is somewhere. I think I want it to be horizontal. We can set the start and stop. Perfect. So we just pressed enter twice, and now we have the yellow. Now you can see that the face of the mango as well as the highlights and shadows are fully gone. So let's reorganize this design to make it look finished, and also add one more little effect to complete the design. So I'm going to click on my sequence view, and you can see that, well, it's not looking the best right now. So I'm going to click on these three buttons right here and collapse everything. Now my goal for this design is to embroider the biggest fill first, and that is the yellow. So we're going to click on this yellow to select the whole shape, and we're going to click move first. When we click move first, you can see it brought the shape to the bottom, which means that it's going to be embroidered first. Next, I want these two leaves because those are the second biggest, so I'm going to select both of them by clicking this check mark right here, and I'm going to bring those underneath the yellow. Perfect, and you can see that we got our highlights back. That's awesome. And the last thing, I want this brown shape to be embroidered third, so I'm going to click and drag to ensure that this one is embroidered third. Perfect. Now, as you can see, the shadows from the mango are still on top of the outline. So all I have to do next is grab the color black, make sure that I select all of it, and I'm just going to bring it all the way down so that shape gets stitched out last. And you can see with a little bit of a quick reorganization, we have an awesome design that has the right order, the right stitch types, and it should embroider out beautifully. But before we finish, we have one more thing to do, and we have to add these cute little cheekbones or these cute little blushy thingies. I don't know what they're called specifically, but we're gonna add those. To create both of these, all I'm gonna do is utilizing the fill tool, I'm going to switch to a circle, and let's create a red color or a dark fuchsia. I'm going to click and drag to create that circle, so you can see made the red fuchsia. But I am going to, while selecting that circle, I'm going to squish it down. So I'm going to go from the top, squish it down, and from the bottom, squish it down. And you can see it looks something like that. Now, before we copy it and put it on the other side, let's just change a couple of those settings. So let's go to our properties. First of all, I'm going to remove the underlays because I don't need any underlays on this design. And we can change the fill pattern if we want to a multitude of patterns, but I think I want this one to be a satin. So we're gonna have this as a satin. The density we can leave as is, or we can increase to maybe 0.6. So let's see what that looks like in 3D. That is super cute. But one more thing that I'm gonna do is switch the inclination or the angle. So for that, I'm going to go under my shape edit, inclination edit, and you can see it's currently horizontal. I want it to be vertical like so. Now going under my sequence view, I can now grab that shape. So I'm going to click on the plus icon. I'm going to grab that one. I can move it around a little bit if I want to, and I'm going to right click on it, copy, and right click on it again and click paste. And then just click and drag to bring it to the other way onto the other eye. I'm going to disable my 3D and just move it like so. And let's move this one a little bit higher. Whoops. Make sure that you're selecting the right shape. So in my case, it's this one. Perfect. Now, let's go out to fit to screen. Let's enable the 3D. And ta-da! We now have a full cute little mango. It has all of the right settings. Thanks to the recipe, this design should be ready to embroider on the fabric that you selected. But remember that you always want to do a test before you finalize your stitch on the actual fabric. So let's go embroider this design and I'll come back with the result. And there you go, guys. That's the final result of this super cute mango design, all embroidered out. It had no break threads or gaps whatsoever. A really cool design ready to be embroidered on my canvas fabric. Inner Circle members, don't forget to download your lesson files below. Not a member yet? Join the Inner Circle and get access to exclusive bonuses, hands-on training, and everything you need to master embroidery digitizing. Click the link in the description to get started. Want to keep learning? Check out these tutorials next and take your embroidery skills even further.